So you wanna be a picture book writer, then you gotta write picture books. And you're gonna need a bucket load of bright ideas for titles, plots, and hooks. If you're partial to prose or you're raring to rhyme, then repeat after me, it's a challenge, but I'm gonna tackle each story 1 month at a time with 12 by 12.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the 12 by 12 Picture Book Podcast. I'm Julie Headland, published picture book author and founder of the 12 by 12 Picture Book Writing Challenge. I'm so excited about today's episode. I'm geeking out a little bit. I'm here with Jorjeana Marie, who has such a fascinating background and career. So I'm going to share some facts about Jorjeana before we get started. She's a comedian. She is the best-selling author of IMPROV for Writers, which we're going to talk a lot about in this episode because I read it and boy, did I have a lot of fun with it. She's a staff writer on the Emmy-nominated Tab Time with Tabitha Brown. She's the magical rabbit Trikini on Disney's Mickey Mouse Funhouse and Mickey Mouse and the Roadster Races. This is something that I think is very cool. So you may recognize her voice from Nickelodeon, Disney, PBS, or from narrating over 400 audiobooks, including some authors that we will be very familiar with in the kidlit space: Jacqueline Woodson, Katie Camillo, Nina LaCour, Elizabeth Gilbert. She's won awards for her audiobooks. She's the new voice of the new Nancy Drew Diaries, and on and on. You've done a lot of writing for television, and you're also a stand-up comedian and a performer, an actor. At this point, there are two things. I'm honored that you're part of 12 by 12 because it feels like you've got so much writing experience. And what that tells me is that you take the craft of writing very seriously, that you know that being able to write in one genre doesn't necessarily make you an expert in writing in another one. And that is certainly true of picture books. But for our listening audience, who will be primarily picture book authors and illustrators, can you start with where your interest lies in that realm?
Of course, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast. Julie, I am so delighted to be here because I've been a member for many years, and I love the community and how much information and how positive it is, and of course, like, I'm here because of the people, like, going to, SCBWI conferences. I looked around the room at my first one, and I cried because I thought, I love all of these people. I don't know any of them, but I
Right.
just love what they stand for, and I love what they've been working on. Many people, their entire careers. So for all of the picture book authors and illustrators out there, I kind of come at everything through character, and humor is something I have spent a lot of time. Like, I'd actually go out in my day going, how can I get somebody to laugh today? Like, how can I, like, just do this in day-to-day life? Because that's part of what the book is about how the philosophy behind improv is maybe scary. It was terrifying to me in the beginning and sometimes still is, but there's, like, such a power with it, and so one of those things is character. So character-driven picture books with heart, and funny picture books like what you write. So, yeah, those are things, but I also love picture books in general open up a window or a door or a crevasse or a keyhole into other dimensions, and it's really worthwhile to spend our time creating them and consuming them.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So one of the motivations for having you come on the podcast at this particular time is this episode will air in May, which is Humor Month. And right now,
Makes me want to dance.
I know, right? Can't every month be Humor Month? But we're hearing a lot from agents and editors that they're looking for humorous picture books right now. So I think a lot of people are really interested in either elevating their humor or learning how to write humor. Good luck. Good luck with that. But there are some tricks to the trade. And actually, at the end, I'm going to give folks a couple of links to go to. But so that was my motivation for having you come on selfishly, because I love writing funny picture books. I have a couple of funny picture books published, and I've kind of danced around the idea of improv, but it absolutely terrifies me, you know? So when I saw your book, Improv for Writers, I was like, huh, that's really interesting, because I could perhaps play around with improv from like the safety of my own, all by myself kind of thing. I don't want to make this episode about me, but I do want to talk about some of the experiences that I had with your book. Before we do that, though, in the book, you give some rules for improv, and then you explain how they apply in writing as well. Would you be able to just quickly give a boom, boom, boom of what those rules are?
Absolutely. And it wasn't easy to choose. The publisher and the editor and I, like, we worked on keeping this list short. I've taught at places and have studied at places where they have 20, 30 rules about the art of improv, and they're valid. But I had to really get under.
If there were 30 rules in this book, I probably wouldn't have gone farther than the table of contents.
Yes, you and probably a lot of other people as well, because it gets overwhelming. But the ones that I chose them because they've been really meaningful to me. And I don't work on them when I go on stage or you play the games when I write, because I do too. I don't do all of them. Like, they're not all there at once. Before I go on stage, I pick one, maybe two, to spend the hour, the 2 hours, or however long I'm going to be on stage focusing on. So I pick one. And I usually pick something that is worth my time strengthening, because, well, I'll just go in with the big one that a lot of people watching and listening will know, which is yes and. And that concept is split apart into two, because they're two things, but they come together to be yes and. So you're agreeing. And this is like on a level of, just as a writer, like, you're agreeing to explore, you're agreeing to try these things, you're agreeing to let go of preconceived ideas, and you're agreeing to, very important, which is one of the other rules, not to judge what you're about to do, because you're who I wrote the book for. I wrote the book for anybody who might not be interested in getting on stage, but there's this powerful tool that I think that they can get to. And I thought, I've taught it in so many different ways. I think we can do this. And so I can't wait to hear how it's been for you, because I do love to hear specifics of things that have happened for people. So yes, saying yes and agreeing to it. And then the second part of that is the adding on of information. So if you were walking on stage and somebody makes you an astronaut about to go into space, the human inclination is actually to say, I'm an astronaut, you're crazy. I'm just standing there, and because that's the reality of it, isn't it? And so we're suspending our disbelief, much like in a book when we go on stage and when we enter into these different worlds. So it's very human to be like, no. And of course, we do that in our writing too, don't we? It's like, I have a book I have not looked at for 2 years. Like, I'm looking at it right now. Stop looking at me.
Right.
And I know that I'm going to yes and that book at some point, because it's the only way it's going to come into the world. So the and part is the adding the information. And so that's the very first one, because without that agreement, like, where are we going to go? Calling each other like, you're not really an astronaut. You're not really a writer. Like, these things are just useless. But one of my favorite ones, and I'm constantly doing this one before I go on stage, is listening. And I have some games in there too about listening, about putting yourself in some part of your story that you're working on, or an imaginary place if you're just exploring these games, and closing your eyes and just listening.
Yeah, I did that one. I couldn't possibly do all of them before because I started reading the book when I was in Italy, which was a couple weeks ago. And there was no way in the past 2.5 weeks to get through all of the games, but I did do quite a few of them. And that was one that I did. And what I love about that is bringing in sensory detail is so important in writing, and we sometimes just forget about it altogether. So listening to the setting of one of my stories was a really interesting exercise, you know, almost for what I didn't hear and
Mhm.
versus what I did hear, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing about these games is like I'll play them over and over. I'm writing on a show or I'm working on trying to solve something. I'll play them. It's going to be different every single time. And that's what improv is like these ideas of how it's going to go. It's great practice for letting go, just like life. Like we have this plan, and guess what? Technology, something doesn't work. We can't find the Zoom link. We, miss the bus. We're just moving forward. And one of the other rules is being in the moment, and that's one of the most important ones. I get torn between if I was on a deserted island, what would I bring with me? And then it's like, well, I'd be alone, so I don't know if I need to bring any of them with me. But being present, working on being in this moment right now, because this is it here with you. This is it.
Yeah, I'm a huge Eckhart Tolle fan, so The Power of Now goes all in on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that and then commitment,
Mhm.
because the commitment is helpful for us as writers too, of just committing to the I do Pomodoro method. So committing to the time period. It's like just sit, I'm not gonna get up. I'm committing to this. I can commit to I'm a writer, I'm a real writer. I'm really doing this. I'm writing, so I'm a writer. And the commitment to that. When I go on stage, I play very strange characters and I love it. One of them is, and I'm curious if you did this one because it's one of the things I wanted to talk about, is inanimate objects. And this is important for writing picture books because children interact with the world around them in a very different way than what we do anymore. We used to do it. They bring it to life and personifying it. And so this is a big thing in animation, which is, a huge chunk of what I love to spend my time doing is taking on the viewpoint. So in improv, I'm going to play the doorknob.
Mhm.
And I'm going to 100% commit to how gross it is to be a doorknob. People grabbing onto me, don't even look at me, don't
Right.
even don't even think about me. I mean, maybe somebody comes along and cleans me once a year, maybe. So
Maybe. Right.
yeah. So the commitment to whatever it is, that's a really big thing for me because things come out of that when you're 100% into that creation and you're in flow. It's an easy way to get into a flow state is to commit to a character, commit to something like that. And I know that it's not for everybody. This audience, I think, is, going to be pretty interested in writing it and probably already has tried it to write as an inanimate object. But yeah, so there's a couple of
I So let me address, first of all, I did do that exercise. And one of the things I wanted to talk about with respect to these exercises is if you're letting go of judgment, committing to whatever comes up. So this may or may not be amusing, but one of the reasons I think the games that you give work so well is you don't get to choose really which inanimate object you're going to be. I mean, you can, right? If you're have a book that has a coffee mug, and you want to do the exercise around a coffee mug for sure. But you say, go to this page and pick a number between 1 through 100. I'm
Mhm.
just, for our listeners, this is how it works. And then you go to a certain page in the book, and the object that corresponds to that number is what you have to write from.
That's right. What number did you get?
Well, I don't remember what number I got, but I do remember the object. This inanimate object exercise comes after the yes and it comes after talking about commitment and so on. And I felt resistance. Like, no, I don't want that object, But I was like, I'm gonna follow the rules. I'm gonna do it. And so the object was an ice pick. And however many years ago, I was in a relationship with a person who turned out to be pretty much a lying sociopath, right? Apropos, this is important to where the direction of the story went. And every year he would go ice climbing in the big ice climbing park here in Southern Colorado. And so I'm writing from the perspective of an ice pick. And suddenly I find the ice pick turning itself around and plunging itself into the heart of the person who's wielding it. And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty dark, But then I leaned into it more. Don't judge yourself. Just let it keep coming. And it turned out that it was really fun.
I do want to just acknowledge that experience, because this is part of what writing gives us. It's such a gift to work through life. And that's also the thing about improv too. That's why there's that list in the back, is because when you do a show with improv, you have the audience and they give you something. And can I tell you how many times I've been given something that you're like, okay, either everybody says that, or I have to suggest, oh, this is a very family friendly show. Just because I've taught adults and kids, and so you're going to get a suggestion of something. And the rule is I always take the very first suggestion. Always. I say thank you, and we do it. And we make something out of it, because that's part of the magic of theater, is this commitment to it. And if I don't want a certain suggestion, I'll tell the audience, like, anything aside from, if I'm asking for a place and I don't want to set it in Paris because we just had a whole show about Paris, like Paris. And that's part of the whole thing about improvisation, is this welcoming atmosphere. We're welcoming ideas to walk in through us, through our office, through our writing space. We're welcoming people to read our work and respond to it and get something out of it that we didn't anticipate when we created it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. The first one that I did was the yes, let's. And so it was choosing a vacation place, right? Like this fantastic vacation. And then you're taking it with one of your favorite celebrities. And the location I got was massage parlor. And the celebrity I chose was Viggo Mortensen, who is forever my Aragorn. And let's just say that did not end up in a place that would make a good picture. Like, I don't know what would have happened if the location had been Disney World instead, but let's just say that those two particular things, it was kind of funny and I was laughing. But then I did wonder, though, how, if you're trying to use this for humor in particular, and when you're not supposed to be judging what comes out, or you're not trying to manipulate, you're just trying to quickly react and come up with the next thing. How can this work with humor? And I do have one exercise that I did where I was more conscious of it, where it helped. But I don't know if I'm making any sense in that question, but
That is a really important question. And I think that, I get into tone in the second half of the book and these different things that make up story. But tone is one of those things that separates the work out from everything else on the shelf. You can look at the tone of the cover to discover a new book that that you're looking for, because the colors are different. It's a certain tone to it. And so it's really about you're adding that layer on when you're playing the games too. So even if you get something that comes across as like, this is kind of serious, but like you're playing around with a certain tone. You're going to sit down and write with this tone. And that's maybe not for the first pass of trying these games. These games are to explore and then to use yourself in different ways. Like the second half of the book is about if you struggle with dialogue, there's a game in there for that. Or if you're like, you just want to loosen up and like you're getting some notes on your dialogue, and that's really about character. And so there's some games on that. So what your question is relating to is tone, really. And so then it's like getting yourself in that funny mood of this is going to be playful. And when an idea that's far away from it comes in, I find that when you're in a tone and you're like, okay, for myself, like, okay, I'm going to write on this show for very young people. And I put the artwork in front of me. I play really playful music. I just wrote on a mystery podcast and put on this really, really cool magical world, like had it up on the screen and created the music and the whole vibe of my writing area to contribute to everything that I came up was going to be a more mysterious tone. So that's my answer about that. But I will also tell you that in improv, one of the rules is to not be funny, to not go for the joke.
Right. Yeah, that was
Some
another thing that I thought was really interesting and cool, because explain more and then I will say something about that.
in performance, sometimes when you go for the joke, like let's just go back to the one about somebody, comes on stage with you and says, are you ready to go into space? We're going in 10, 9, and you go, and go into space? I'm standing here in a theater. You probably get a laugh, but at what expense? So you're funny, but it's not a funny that builds something, which is fine if you want to be that person. And there's a place for that kind of humor, maybe in a middle grade book or, the opposition. There's obviously a place for mean humor, but that's kind of my thought on that.
Right. Yeah, I got to that part and I agreed with so much of it. That the weird thing about humor is that a lot of it is playing the straight man. Like, you're not trying to be funny. The kiss of death to me is trying to be funny. And one of the resources that I'm going to give to folks at the end of this episode is a webinar that I did on writing funny, because you have to really pull back on your desire to throw down the jokes or too many. I love wordplay, but there can be too many puns, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things that are the funniest are when people are either not trying to be funny or they're pretending not to be funny. And one of the examples that came to my mind is I love the movie Airplane, right? And what makes that movie so funny is that these people are just acting like everything that they're doing and saying is perfectly normal. They're taking it very seriously. And my book, Over Bare Underwear, was actually inspired by the movie Airplane. Over was over under and under was overdone, And they're just talking to each other and it's hilarious, but they're not doing it like we're going to be funny. And so the same thing is true with writing picture books, especially because we have the illustrations. So a lot of times you need to let the art reveal the joke, the punchline, to say whatever the opposite thing is that you're saying. So sometimes it's like the text is playing the straight man and the illustrations are the jester, the jokester,
Yes, and also sometimes it's the concept of it too. Like just coming up with that funny concept and then keeping that in mind when you're writing, that you don't have to lean too hard into it. The concept is already doing a lot of the work, so be true to the situation, the characters, the airplane thing. As soon as you said that, I was like, yes, I also. And then I had to, every time I meet somebody, because it's like, I teach stand up to kids too. And one of the things that I've discovered is that knowing right away before we get into getting up and doing comedy is talking about what we as individuals like and what's funny to us. And knowing that before you sit down to write something that's funny is important, because there's a reason that you like it. There's a reason why that's funny to you. So I love physical comedy. So then in animation, when I write these sequences where like a chase sequence, I'm seeing the doors slamming. I'm just seeing all of these things that can happen, the thing on the ground that nobody sees, somebody's flying through the air, and the action part of it, because that's something that I love to watch. And so when you said airplane, I have to ask, have you seen Angie Tribeca?
No.
Okay, so I have a little offering because I am absolutely obsessed with this show, Rashida Jones, and it is brilliant, and there's not enough of it, but I think there's 3 seasons of it,
Oh,
and
great.
I think that you'll really like it. And a lot of times I meet somebody who hasn't watched the show, and I go through, like, multiple times because it's what you're talking about with that the humor isn't, like, right there, but then in the background, like, there's something, the dog will be doing something funny,
Right.
like, there's layers to it, and that's the
Right.
same thing with picture books too. There's layers we create. If we're the author doing text only, we're creating our layer of it, and then we're working
Right.
with somebody who's there because they know how to create funny images.
Mm-hmm. And it's subtext, the thing that runs underneath that you have to trust the reader, or in your case, if you're performing, the audience, to get to fill in that part,
Yeah.
the part that they're not saying out loud.
There is a game that everybody's playing that's called Survival of the Wittiest, and it's a competition to see who gets the most laughs, but it's not a comfortable environment to be in, because there's this, "Hey, get in here," kind of attitude with improv when you're with people who've done it for a long time, like, just, "Hey, come on," and kind of creating that. And if we're sitting at home alone writing, we're doing that with our characters, we're doing that with ideas, and that's what this book is really about. It is about getting yourself in a place where these brilliant ideas are really thrilled to walk in and connect with the writer. Because when we're constantly batting them away, going, "Not that one, not like that, no, this isn't good," and like all the things that we can do, the ideas are like, I always think of them as little wonderful little creatures, and they get shy. But if we're creating this atmosphere, then these ideas are just like, barge it in. I mean, do you not experience that where sometimes in your
Yes.
life they're just come on because we've created the space for it.
Right. So to that, I have 2 things. You said that when you're writing, rather than having another person or persons there to play off of, that you're actually using whatever it is that you're writing to play the game with. And I really liked that you put it that way. So for instance, I'm playing improv with the ice pick or Viggo Mortensen's. Right?
Yes.
And even though it's in my imagination, but and that right there, I think you just solved for me why I found this book so much easier to work with than writing prompts. So historically just do not like writing prompts. I feel like the second somebody gives me a prompt, I'm just calcified against whatever. I feel pressure for some reason. And I couldn't quite figure out why I didn't feel that way here with these games. And I think that was a big part of it. You're not really writing. So if you say the same thing, like pick a setting and then a celebrity and write about a vacation you take with them, is very different from pick a number, go get this setting, take this person, and then begin every sentence with, yes, let's. And that yes, let's forces your hand to keep moving. Because if I were to get that as just one prompt, I would try to start building the whole thing in my head as I'm writing. I'm trying to construct that scene rather than just writing the one thing and then the next thing and the next thing. I don't know if that's making sense. But
Yeah.
but when you said that, like, you're playing a game, the approach that you take to it in the book, which comes from performance, from improv, really worked well for me in a way that writing prompts tend not to.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
And so to your point about when you start saying yes and accepting ideas, I was like, okay, this can't be a coincidence. Because yesterday I was working on a lot of these exercises because I wanted to have them fresh in my mind for our conversation today. And I woke up this morning feeling like I had a way in to a story idea that I got when my son was in the 3rd grade, and he is a sophomore in college now. And a lot of times when that happens for me, especially when I'm first waking up, because I'm not a morning person, I'm just like, I'll do it later, you know? But instead of doing that, I grabbed a notebook and wrote it all down.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And I can't help but think that the two things are connected, right? Like once you just open your brain to letting things come in, things will just come in. And that was a pretty cool experience for me.
That's beautiful. And it's so nice to hear. I thank you for sharing that. And that's special too, because that's an idea that's been yours and with you from a special time for a long time. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's wonderful.
So you mentioned funny concepts. So I feel like that's one of my strengths. I can come up with a funny concept. Most of the time, my funny books come in that form, either in a title or like that scene in Airplane. You know, how funny is that? Like over is over under and under is over over. You know, can I write a whole story that and one of the books that I have on submission right now is inspired by a John Mulaney skit. So I really do think that you can get ideas from anywhere. And so a lot of times I have titles or a concept, but the story itself, just the story that accompanies that doesn't really want to show its face. I feel like having a funny concept creates a container almost. And then sometimes it comes in all at once, like a flood, like it did today. And sometimes just I'll get a drip or two here and there, and I'll kind of meh, but it creates a container almost, is how I think of it. And I loved what you said about because we're trying not to force ourselves to be funny. And one way to do that is to have a funny concept. And years ago, I was at an SCBWI conference, and Lynn Oliver, who was formerly the executive director of SCBWI and a great humorist, and was talking about writing humor. And one of the things that she said was, if you have a funny concept, then it practically writes itself. And she was talking about a book, and I don't read much middle grade, so I may not remember the title of this. Daniel Funk Got Shrunk or something like that. And somehow the main character gets shrunk down to like the size of an inch. And so part of what she did was just spend a few hours thinking about all the things that could happen to a person. Like you could drown in a cup of tea, you know. And
Totally.
in one scene, she put him in a diorama, you know, those shoebox dioramas that we made as kids. And his brother had scooped actual sand from the beach, and so there was a little crab in there and whatever. And I think about that a lot because I do think that and that's almost like literally create the sandbox and then play around in there.
Yes, yes, that I love that. I love all of the things about that because when I'm writing on a show, I in animation, many of the shows that I've been on, I'm pitching ideas to them about Minnie Mouse or about trolls or about these animated flowers and what could happen. And so I have to come up with a lot of great ideas so that I can send some that are really strong so that I can write the episode and move along. So it's a lot of idea generating, and I spend a lot of time doing that. And one of the things that I do is I work same way in animation. I work as on stage in some of the theater companies I've been. My favorite suggestion to get from an audience is simply place. Give me a place, please. And so somebody says kitchen, or they get detailed and they say kitchen in a trailer, which doesn't usually happen. People will be really simple about it, but those specifics can help with the comedy too. So being really specific about a place, and then just what you were talking about, what could possibly happen to this person this size in this place, or in this they're going to be in this house. Like what else can be happening? And I wrote for a show for DreamWorks, for Netflix DreamWorks, and we had really small characters in this show, and so it was a lot of like, okay, well, what could happen at the park, and to a very small character, and just listing those out, and would set the timer because that helps me accomplish it. So I give myself 2-3 minutes to write as many as I can, and that timer keeps me. It's the same thing as like the audience giving you pressure. Like you can take a moment when you say, "Can I have a place?" Because the audience is thinking too. Then they give you the place and they say, banquet. And you're like, oh, your brain is working like, what's a banquet? Like, but I can make it anything that I want. A banquet, like anywhere. That could be in somebody's house. That could be at the fanciest French restaurant. Like, I don't know. And I can take that moment, and before I move and before I begin, allow a concept to come into place.
Mm-hmm.
And it might just be a visual image, but it's enough for me to begin the scene with the other actors or actor.
Right.
Because these are really about like, move forward and don't think about anything, but you're springing from something. And you can allow a moment for that to take place, and then don't stop yourself. Then keep going. I love that example, and it's so true. Like, what else could happen here? It can solve all these story things. If I'm like having trouble with something, it's like, all right, well, we're going to take this time and just play this game of what's the most ridiculous thing that can happen. There's a game in there. It's one of my favorites. And when I do a live workshop and we're going through the games, I almost always try to end with it because it's so fun. It's called Raise the Stakes. And on stage, it's basically,
Oh, that's a good one.
yeah, this is for plot and for things like that. And just like making something happen in your story, playing this until you come up with all these ridiculous things. And most of them you're probably never going to put in your novel or in your picture book. But because you're playing that game, and sometimes there's a gem just sitting there coming to you the next day because you've been in a state of flow playing improv, which has been around for thousands of years. You're tapping into something that's part of our culture and part of our world, and you're doing it like you did relentlessly. It's like, yes, now. We spend a lot of time saying no and stopping ourselves, others, whether as teachers or parents, and we get into that mode. And it's nice to just be like, nah.
All right. So if I give you a character in a location, can you do like a minute as that character in that place?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, do you feel comfortable? I just think it would be kind of fun. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. What do you
All
got?
right. I got a squirrel in an art museum.
I don't see any lasers. I think I can get it off the wall. They're over there. They're over there. Your son, you told me that the security was gonna be tested. Going over there. Sign up for this. This is supposed to be amazing.
That's awesome. If for those of you listening, you're going to want to go watch just that part on the YouTube channel because the face that you made. See now, I'm so glad I asked because I would not have thought about putting the physicality into it. But of course, you're a theater performer. Like I would just start thinking of what a squirrel would say and do. But that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I immediately just become them and then let whatever unfold. I didn't know why I was there. But
Hmm.
in the mishmash of making the transition to fully commit and become a rodent, I'm just up to no good. And then I'm anxious about it too. And it all just sort of, and now I've got to go write that book.
Right? See, now there's a funny concept. Squirrel in an art museum. And that's the thing about writing prompts is that they'll do that, right? Like mash this thing that doesn't belong in that thing, but it just doesn't come out like, if the prompt is take something and put it in a location it doesn't belong. I think that the way the games in this book just kind of provide more direction on how to do that, how to let go, because I realize now, like I said, what I do with writing prompts is I try to create the whole thing in my head. Other people, I'm sure, are way better at that. Like you mentioned the Pomodoro method, where you just set the timer and you're going to write for however long about anything that comes up. Like morning pages, for instance, for anybody who's done the artist's way. But these are like directed, fun morning pages. So with character in particular, I really like the emphasis on that because in addition to editors and agents saying that they're looking for humorous picture books, they're also looking for character-driven picture books. And I have never been the kind of person who could sit down and interview my character. You find these character worksheets where it's like, "What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?" And that never works for me because I cannot suspend my disbelief. It's like, I know that I'm the one saying this. I still feel myself as the chooser of those things. Whereas in these exercises, because you're literally going inside their skin and there's a structure to how you write each line, that helped a lot. So hopefully it's just a different way of working for some people like me who struggle with playing. That's what it is. I struggle with playing.
Yeah. First of all, like that you can come up with funny concepts and easily, I'm going, well, that's great. That's something I have to work on. I have other things. So we all have these different strengths. So it's really about kind of bringing up the different things that you want to hone and make stronger, spending the time. I think all of these things are like muscles. When you mentioned about morning pages, I did think, it could be fun to play one of these games, do a challenge and have people play a game in the morning for a certain number of days. Because what a fun way. I write in the mornings, so I do that, but I don't start with a game. I want to pilot that myself and see if how that goes and then challenge some other people to try that because when you start your day, how you begin your day, I believe really affects the rest of it, like the very beginning. That's why I meditate in the morning, or at least I try to. I used to be really, really committed to that. And then, what's like with kids, it's somehow not as important. Actually, it is still really important to set my day up well so that I can be somebody who goes into the world with a sense of play. How much do we need that right now? Not ignoring people's empathy and compassion is obviously so important. But if we can get ourselves in that place where we're feeling playful, it's again like the ideas can come in, but also it's just a lot of fun. Like I learned it from teaching kids. They taught me. I really have always stayed connected to like the 5-year-old and the 8-year-old versions and the really awkward 11 and 12-year-old. I see them and I'm there with them. And so I just happen to be grateful that I have really silly, playful, like 5-year-old versions of myself because it's like in, therapy and done things. And it's like, what is your inner child? They want to swing. They want to eat candy. Let's go play. So anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right. So tell us what you are working on now, what you have coming up that you're excited about.
I have a book on submission. It's another specifically comedy situation. And I've just been writing and studying and reading so much poetry. And so I guess I just want to encourage, it's a thought that's come up for anyone. And I love the episode with Renee Latulippe. I'm a really huge fan, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. And I love that episode with her because there's so much to learn, but also like just free verse and just playing. And I am getting my master's in writing for children. I did an intensive on picture books, and I did an intensive 2 semesters on writing in verse. And so I've just really been like reading and writing as much poetry and submitting it, and hopefully I'll have more to share with that. So
Yay.
playing with words, like just playing with words and feeling cocooned. Like it's been several years of just all kinds of poetry. I don't know what I want to do with this, but I came to the realization one day that poetry is very much like improv in that it seems free, but there are all these techniques, or they're called forms in both camps. They're called forms, and they are the structure underneath the freedom so that you can fly with the characters and the words and the stories. So I encourage everybody to, if they're not ready to take an improv class, which I think that would be great. People take an improv class somewhere if they like the program near them, and to absorb some poetry.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned, because we're actually recording this on April 30th, so it is the very last day of Poetry Month. And as you mentioned, we had 3 episodes on the podcast in April that were all poetry focused. One was Renee Latulippe, and we had Lisa Rogers, who writes poetic, lyrical picture book biographies. And then last week we had Keela Dawson, who is one of the editors of 3 poetry anthologies. So there's different angles on poetry. So for those of you who want to dig more into that, you can go back to those episodes. And I'm also going to give 25% discount on a webinar that I gave last year called Cooking Up Funny, Recipes for Writing Funny Picture Books. And you can get that at 12by12challenge.com. That's 12x12challenge.com/cooking. And Jorjeana, this was so fun. I could talk to you for another 4 hours, and we're going to have to keep in touch and do more with this because, like you said, it's so fun and we need more fun. And I really have to say, for anybody who just wants to explore improv and how it can work with writing, that's a little less scary than taking an improv class, go and grab this book, Improv for Writers. I promise you, you will have fun. You'll be highlighting all of these quotes, and the book is written very much in your voice. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, if you enjoyed listening to Jorjeana talk about this stuff, you're going to enjoy reading the book. It is very approachable and funny and low-key and encouraging. It's not really instruction. Like you said, it's a gift. Here, try this. It's fun. I promise. Nobody's looking at you. Just do it. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for coming and sharing your experience. And we will look forward to celebrating your picture books as they come out in 12 by 12.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. What a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Together, so never you fear. It's a handy little way to help you kick into gear. You're amazing, exciting. Look out, 'cause you're writing 12 by 12. 12 manuscripts. 12